What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. We're still in the 1980s, and we're looking at 1982, one of the greatest fights of all time, Arron Pryor and Alexis De Guerre. Let's take a look at these opponents much closer. Alexis De Guerre was born April 19, 1952, in Magnolia, Nicaragua. He had his professional debut as a featherweight, November 18, 1968. Israel Medina was his first opponent, which he knocked out in the first round. December 1972, there was an earthquake that killed 2,000 people in Nicaragua, leaving 275,000 people homeless. In 1972, he had a record of 26-2 with 20 knockouts. In 1973, November 27th, he knocked out Jose Legre, which is an outstanding feat because Jose Legre would be champion. Starts him in the very first round. 1974, as a 22-year-old, he challenged Ernesto Marcel, WBA champion. He came up short in 15 rounds. But on August 29, 1974, he faced Francisco Apalaco to win the Central America Featherweight Championship. November 23rd, he faced Ruben Olivares and wins the WBA Featherweight title. I have Ruben Olivares, one of the greatest bantamweight champions of all time. He had 4 title defenses in 1975. In 1977, he gives up the featherweight title because he outgrew the division. January 28, 1978, he knocks out in 13 rounds Alfredo Escalera to win the WBC Junior Lightweight Championship. 3 title defenses he had in that year, 1978. In July 8th, he knocks out Bazooka Limon in 11 rounds. July 17th, he knocks out Bobby Chacon in 7 rounds. Now, those 2 fighters right there, Bazooka Limon and Bobby Chacon, had great wars in them years. They had about 4 to 5 dynamite wars between 1981 and 1984. Fantastic little fighters from Mexico. January 20th, 1980, he knocks out Ruben Olivares in 11 rounds. Fascinating fighter. But in 1982, he has to face this dynamic fighter, Arron the Hawk Pryor, who was a WBA Junior Welterweight champion who took the title away from Antonio Cervantes. Arron Pryor was born October 20th, 1955, Cincinnati, Ohio. He stood 5 foot 6.5 He weighed 140 pounds. He began his boxing career at the age of 11 in Emmanuel Community Center. He won a national AAU and Golden Gloves titles in Cincinnati with a record of 216 fights, 16 losses. He lost to Kronk fighter Hilmer Kinte, but he defeated another Kronk fighter, Thomas the Motor City Cobra Hearns. He lost to Howard Davis of Long Island, New York, and lost his opportunity in 1976 in the Olympic trials. He began his professional debut November 12, 1976, with a second-round knockout of Larry Smith. He had 8 fights in 1977, 5 fights in 1978, and 6 fights in 1979. 4 fights in 1980 until August 2nd, when he faced Antonio Cervantes and knocked him out in 4 rounds. Fascinating. That was for the WBA Junior Welterweight title. He knocks out Alexis De Guerre in 1982 in 14 rounds, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest fights of all time. Salute to Alexis De Guerre. Salute to Arron Pryor. Dynamite fighters. Alexis De Guerre became 3-time champion, and Arron Pryor was undefeated until he made a comeback, and he lost 1 fight. This is Scrapbook Boxing. They've just been joined in my Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Let's take a look at a dynamic fight that took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. We had Marvelous Marvin Hagler facing off with John the Beast Mugabe. This was a fascinating fight. I was at that fight personally. I can tell you that it was a dynamic fight. It was raining outside. It was kind of chilly out there. Had all the celebrities that you can think of there at the time. And this fight brought Sugar Ray Leonard out of retirement, because what Sugar Ray Leonard saw I noticed it right away. Marvin Hagler, after the third round, he had the slug, couldn't box. And Mugabe was forced to box because he couldn't slug with Hagler. And that's what exposed Hagler's feet, his foot movement. And that's what Sugar Ray Leonard obviously saw, because I noticed it myself. And that's why he took the fight. So Marvin Hagler, his date of birth was May 23rd, 1954. He was born in Newark, New Jersey. His hometown is Brockton, Massachusetts. At that fight, his age was 31. He was 160 pounds. He stood 5'9.5". He had a 75-inch reach, which is phenomenal for a middleweight. And John Abuz Mugabe, date of birth was March 4th, 1960. He was from Kampala, Uganda. Hometown, Tampa, Florida. He was 25 years old at the time. He weighed 160 pounds. He stood 5'8.5" and had a 74-inch reach. This was a phenomenal fight. I just wanted to relive that fight for a moment. Salute to these awesome fighters in the 1980s. Marvin Hagler knocks out John Abuz Mugabe in the 11th round. Then on that same card, you had Thomas Hearns knocking out James Shuler. And on that undercard, you had, as bantamweight, Gaby Canizales knocking out Richie Sandoval to win the WBA title. Like I said, I was at that fight, and I witnessed Ricky Sandoval in the rain, was pouring rain out, and he had to be carried to the hospital because he was hit so hard by Gaby Canizales. It was a ferocious night, beautiful card, great fight. The other fight on that card was Thomas the Hitman Hearns and James Shuler. Now, James Shuler was a very, very good amateur fighter, and he held the NBA middleweight title at that time, at that particular fight. And that's what they were fighting for. And here's the tail of the tape. Thomas Hearns, October 18th, 1958, with his birth date. He was born Memphis, Tennessee. His hometown was Detroit, Michigan. He was 26 years old at the time of this fight. He weighed 160 pounds, and he stood 5'1". His reach is 78 inches. Very, very long for a welterweight. That moved up to middleweight. Thomas Hearns was a natural welterweight. And he was a phenomenal fighter because he won the welterweight, the junior middleweight, light heavyweight. One of a kind, Thomas Hearns. I just wanted to share this moment with you since we were talking about the 80s. Phenomenal fighter, Thomas Hitman Hearns, James Shuler.